Coming to you from the city where more than 100 million Chinese food cartons are used annually, half of them by college students, it's Ventriloquism Weekly. Wow, and I mean wow. We have a really fun guest for you today. Welcome back on this Monday to all you double talkers out there. What we have today is so exciting. I can't wait to bring it to you. I got maybe 4 or 5 questions in, literally, during an interview that ended up being over an hour long with the awesome Pete Michaels. We will be presenting it to you in 2 parts. Excuse me. Pete Michaels is a ventriloquist who has performed all over the country in any type of venue you can imagine. He was the first ventriloquist to release a video tutorial on the art form, and the first non-African American ventriloquist to perform at the Apollo. Known for his character Woody D and inheriting Francisco the Mexican Parrot from friend Sammy King, Pete has had an unbelievable journey in this art form. Born and raised in New York, Michaels currently makes his home on Staten Island. True to his New York upbringing, Michaels holds nothing back when recounting his career. A note of apology before the interview, just like I coughed here, at the time and kind of right now, is in the end stages of a sinus infection. So on the tape, you hear me sniff just a few times, but rest assured, I did try to turn away from the mic. That sucker is powerful. Here now, with stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat, the first part of our interview with Pete Michaels. Pete Michaels, welcome to the program. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Wonderful to be here.
Wonderful. Well, it's awesome to have you, and the reason we waited till now is because you're from the New York area, and I want to start doing people that are now local. So I always begin at the beginning. Where did your journey in ventriloquism start?
Started when I was a young fellow, probably about 5 years old. I remember watching television as a young fellow there with a limited number of channels in black and white. And there was this product called Nestle's Quick, and there were these wonderful commercials with this guy with a ventriloquist with these puppets, and I was like, who is this guy? And it turned out to be our friend Jimmy Nelson, of course, and Danny O'Day and Farfel. And I was so fascinated by just the look of Danny O'Day. Not so much the whole ventriloquism aspect, but, you know, there were a lot of puppet shows and puppet-related programs back in the day, more so than today. And just so fascinated by the look of the ventriloquist puppet that my parents actually went out and for Christmas told Santa that I wanted a ventriloquist puppet. So they somehow, Santa or they, in collusion with each other, got me a Juro Danny O'Day doll.
Wow.
With a little pull string on the back of the neck. And I was so fascinated with having this thing. Most kids took a teddy bear to sleep at night. I took my little Danny to sleep at night as a 5-year-old. And really had no desire to learn ventriloquism. I mean, they came with the little directions and stuff, but I was just happy to have a little Danny O'Day, a little pal, you know, because I was an only child. And I had this little pal that I could talk to and make him talk and pull the string. And then, you know, eventually I did learn, you know, rudimentary ventriloquist skills with a little instruction packet that came with it. But that's really how it all started for me, just, you know, watching. And then, of course, later on, Winchell Mahoney Time with Paul Winchell was broadcast here in New York. And anytime there was a ventriloquist on the Ed Sullivan Show or anything with a ventriloquist, if they showed those Edgar Bergen movies on TV, I would make sure to watch. So that's where the fascination of the art started. It really started with Jimmy and Danny and Farfel.
That's great. That's, just it kind of echoes where a lot of it's starting now with Jeff and Terry for kids today.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I'm glad that we have Jeff and Terry and other contemporaries for kids to watch and be inspired to possibly become ventriloquists.
Yes. So those first shows growing up, where did they take you? What
the first show I ever did was a show and tell in class. I went to Catholic grammar school, No comments. And everybody had show and tell. So one girl brought a little pet hamster that she had, and another kid brought a little a guitar or some little toy guitar. And I brought my little Danny in a shopping bag. I carried him to school because I lived right a block away from school. And I carried him to school in a little shopping bag, and, nobody knew what was in this bag. I wouldn't tell anybody. And I was very nervous about the whole thing. I'd never performed in front of anyone before. And came my time to come up there, and I brought my little shopping bag up there, and I opened it up, and you could hear everybody go, oh, wow, oh, cool, because they had never seen one of these things up close. They'd seen them on TV. And I just did a little rudimentary because, you have to remember, the little Juro Danny only had a little string out of the back of the neck. It had no moving head, no moving eyes or anything like that. So I just, sat him on my knee, and I'd say, well, what's your name? Oh, my name is Danny. Doing the best I could. Right. Which, by today's standards, was horrible. But, again, when you're a 7-year-old kid, a 6-year-old kid, it was like, a big deal to bring this thing into school. So that was my first, if you want to call it, public performance.
Great.
And I was beet red. I was so nervous and embarrassed, and the typical flop sweat. As a kid, with all these fellow classmates, staring down at me, and I'm in front of the class, and the nun is sitting there looking at me like, what is this kid doing with this doll?
That's great, though. That's a great story. You get the kids mesmerized, and then you grew up and you started doing it professionally. How did you fall into this? Is something I wonder for people that do it full time. How did you fall into this being your career?
Well, that's an interesting story because my life took a lot of detours. I was working in Manhattan. I had put down the ventriloquism for a while because during high school, I was in the school plays. I was in every conceivable band in high school: junior band, jazz band, concert band, playing drums, senior band, marching band. So I concentrated on the music and the theater, the drama and comedy, musicals more than anything else. And I was working in Manhattan at the time. We're talking about like 1978 right about now. I was 20 years old, playing in a band at night, working in Manhattan during the day, and saw this commercial on TV for this film called Magic with Anthony Hopkins and Anne Margaret, Burgess Meredith. Mm. And the little commercial that they did, it was only maybe it was a 15-second, 20-second spot. It was a lot, maybe 30 seconds, with this dummy, doing this little poetry thing, this rhyme, abracadabra, I sit on his knee, presto changeo, and now he's me, hocus pocus, we take her to bed, magic is fun, we're dead. And I'm like, what? And it's magic, a terrifying love story. And I was like, but just this 30-second teaser spot that they put on the air, when you see a commercial for a movie and you go, whoa, I got to go see this.
Yeah.
That's what hit me with this. I was like, I've got to go see it because, there wasn't any really... Ventriloquism hadn't made the news in so long. There hadn't been a film about it in so long that when this thing came out and I saw this teaser, I was like, you know what? When this movie comes out, I'm seeing this. So, fast forward, the movie finally comes out. I'm working in Manhattan, and I call my folks, and I said, listen, I'm gonna go up to Broadway, and I think it was Broadway and 45th Street or something like that. At the Lowe's Theater. I said, after work, I'm gonna take the train up there. I'm gonna see this movie Magic that I've been bugging to see. Okay, fine. So I go right after work. Must have been about I guess 6:00 show, and I see this movie, and I am fascinated with the mechanics and the look of what we now know to be Fats from the movie. And it was your typical, ventriloquism, psycho movie thing, but that really wasn't what drew me to the movie. What drew me to the movie was the incredible puppet that was in this film. And again, looking at Danny O'Day as a 5-year-old and being fascinated by him, and I was an adult being fascinated by the mechanics of this figure, I said, wow, I really got to get back and learn this, and really do this full time now and not just play around anymore. Because the Danny O'Day I had as a kid was long gone, was long destroyed. Between age 6 and age 20, Lord knows what happened to it.
Right.
So as soon as the movie was over, I knew where I was in Manhattan because I'd been here many, many times. I went next door. Was Tannen's Magic Shop.
Yes.
It was a legend in New York City. They have since changed locations a couple of times. But I went to this Tannen's, which was upstairs, the 14th floor, I believe it was, and I said, do you have any books on ventriloquism? And Jack Ferrero, the fellow who was there at the time, he says, you just saw the movie, didn't you? And I'm like, yes. He knew right away, but I'm sure I was not the only guy who had this sudden desire to learn ventriloquism. So he says, well, I do have this one book. It's called Ventriloquism of Today by a fellow named Paul Stadelman, the late Paul Stadelman. Mm-hmm. He says, and it's a real good beginner's book and teaches you a lot. And I said, okay. So it was a soft cover book, like 8.5 by 11 format, large format. So I took, and it was published in like 1963. So I took the book home, and I'm reading this thing cover to cover every day, back and forth on the Staten Island ferry. I'm reading this book. My friends were looking at me like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, I'm reading this book on ventriloquism. They're like, "Why?" I said, "Well, I want to end up doing this. I want to." And they're like, "Dude, you're 20 years old. You're playing in a band now. You got long hair and." You play drums and, you're working in the daytime as a payroll clerk. I said, so what? So I'm reading this book, and finally I went back up to Tannen's and I said, do you have any ventriloquist figures? And he said, well, he pointed to a few that they had, and they really weren't the best quality figures. Nothing like what I was looking for. Nothing like what Fats looked like. And I'm like, well, I wanted something kind of like, Marshall-ish or something like, which I didn't know if Fats was, like almost McElroy type of thing. So I said, okay, I'll wait. Fast forward a few months, and I'm looking in the phone book during my lunch hour. And I said, there's got to be somebody that knows where you can get a real good ventriloquist dummy from. So I said, well, let me just see if there are any ventriloquists or magicians in the phone book, that might know. So I found this fellow in Brooklyn. His name was Murray Baum. I'll never forget his name. If I talked to this guy just once, but I remember the name. He said, listen, I'm looking for a good ventriloquist dummy. Do you know of anybody? I said, I noticed you do ventriloquism in your magic shows. He said, yeah, there's a guy here in Brooklyn. His name is George Schindler at Showbiz Services, and he carries all kind of ventriloquist supplies, books and figures and stuff. I said, great. So I called this guy George up, and we talk and blah, blah, blah. He says, yeah, I'll send you catalogs, and, okay for him. So I sent me catalogs, and I'm looking, and I'm like, oh, wow, these aren't too bad. He was having figures made by Howie Olsen, if he's the legendary ventriloquist figure maker many, many years ago.
Yeah. And
I said, okay, I'll purchase one of these, In the meantime, I had gotten a hold from George. I had gotten a hold of Mark Wade. Now, Mark Wade, at that point in '78, was still doing the New Oracle, which was a ventriloquism bi-monthly newsletter in like a booklet format. So I called up Mark Wade. I started talking to him, and I wrote him and stuff like that. I joined what was then the SAV, Society of American Ventriloquists, and I started getting the New Oracle delivered to my house. So I'm reading the New Oracle, and they got wonderful articles about Jimmy and Bill Bowley and, Johnny Main and all these wonderful people that I hadn't even met yet, but I just found them so fascinating. And in the meantime, I had gotten the first figure from George Schindler, whom I named Gitch. Now, how that all came about, what's that mean? I have a cousin with the same name as me. We're a month apart, born a month apart. And his nickname, of all things, is Fats.
That's cool.
So, yeah. So when I was watching the movie in the theater, I said, "Wow, that's so cool." This puppet has my cousin Pete's nickname. Now, my nickname as a kid was Gitch, as I guess Gitchy. I don't know, but that was my nickname as a kid, Gitch, and my aunts and uncles still call me that to this day. So I said, "Well, if I ever get a dummy, I'm going to name him Gitch," So the first Gitch I had was the one I got from George Schindler, and there was the Howie Olsen figure, and it was nice. It was a good beginner figure. I just took a sip of water.
Yeah.
But it really wasn't what I was looking for. So, it's nice, but it's, not what I really want, but, it'll do. And I found out it was made out of this substance called permatone. Now, what permatone was it was molded. It was a mixture of like plaster of Paris and paper fibers and wood pulp kind of stuff. It was nice, but I found out when I took it on a trip to L.A. To see some friends of mine, and put it in a little suitcase, and the hand kind of broke.
Oh.
And I'm like, well, what's this made out of? And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, it looks like plaster of Paris with like little wood paper fiber things impregnated into it. It's like, oh, it's not really that cool. So as a result of reading the new article, I found another figure maker who lived in Ford's, New Jersey. Now, Ford's, New Jersey, from where I live in Staten Island, is a 40-minute ride.
Right.
And this fella turned out to be Alan Seamark.
Oh, wow.
So I said, let me call this fellow up because he's close, and I saw a picture of what he does, and he had advertised in there, and I was like, well, these look like pretty cool dummies. So I called him up, and I said, hi. I introduced myself, and I said, I'm looking to have a ventriloquist figure made. He said, well, what do you have in mind? He said, you want an old man type or what they call a cheeky boy type? And I said, yeah, that's probably what I want, like the cheeky boy type of thing. He said, okay. He said, I said, how long would it take to have something made? He says, probably about a year. And my heart just sank right there. And I'm like, a year? I wanted it yesterday.
Yeah.
Typical young guy, ventriloquist, and I said, so now I learned to ask the next question that I learned in my arsenal right that day. I said, well, do you have anything lying around maybe that you're not going to really do anything with that you might want to sell? And he says, well, he goes, funny you mention that. He goes, I do have this head right now in a vice. Now, I knew what he was talking about, but everybody else was, what? A head in a vice? What? Uncle Fester from the Addams Family?
Yeah, really.
Well, I said, yeah. He goes, and it's not really completed. It's got a base coat on it, but it does have winking eyes, blinking eyes, side-to-side eyes, moving mouth. It's got brown eyes. So I said, well, that kind of sounds like something I might be interested in. He says, all right. He said, if you want to come over one day and take a look at it and see if you might, be something you're interested in. I said, okay. So I drive over there, and I look, and there's this head in a vise with just a base flesh tone coat with the strings just hanging out of the head stick. There weren't even any controls installed yet.
Yeah. But
But I looked at this face, and I was like, that's it. Yeah, I'm doing a Jerry Lewis. Yes, oh boy. And I was so excited. I said, yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking for. He said, okay. He said, all right. So he gave me a price, and I said, well, how long would it take to get that, have it? He said, a week. I was like, a week? He said, yeah. He said, all I got to do is just install the controls and put a wig and a body on it and, finish the paint job. I said, okay. Now, Matt, this was the longest week in the world.
yeah, I was just going to say, did it feel like a month,
This was like a kid on Christmas week.
Right.
Waiting for Santa with the big countdown.
Yeah.
So I'm counting the days, and I go home and I tell my parents, still living home, and my mom didn't really get this. My dad did. My dad was so supportive of what I did, God rest his soul. But my mom didn't get this at all. She said, "Hey, you stupid puppet stuff for 20 years. Oh, what are you, crazy? Not wasting your money." Especially when I told her how much Gitch was going to cost. Which I don't even know if I should reveal it today, but we're talking, what is that, 78. Do the math for me. How many years ago was that?
78 was 30. I'm a theater major, not a math guy.
Yeah.
So give her, 30 years, over 30 years, 35 years.
Over 30 years. Thank you. Yeah, we'll work at that. So now my dad goes, do you have the money for that? I said, not really. I said, he says, all right. He says, what do you got saved up? And I had, if I had half of that, it was a lot, you know. He said, all right, I'll give you the other half. He said, I'd rather see you do something, you know, that you enjoy, that's positive. Not that I was a knucklehead doing anything negative. I wasn't. I worked 5 days a week. I taught martial arts with my dad 4 nights a week, and I worked, you know, as in a band 3 nights a week, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. He said, but if this is what you want to do, and, you know, I'm all for it. He goes, you know, I'd like to see you do it. He said, but, you know, just don't put it aside. I said, no, yes. I said, you see me, I have the other gits that I've been doing stuff with, but this is really a professional. He goes, I understand. So he spotted me the rest of the money. Now the week goes by, and my then girlfriend came with me. And we get to the house, we go down the basement, and I could smell the fresh oil paint, you know, because he was drying all week. And there he is, sitting there, you know, with a pair of brown slacks, brown shoes, a cream-colored turtleneck, and a tan-colored jacket. And there he is, and he's mine. And he's, you know, and I put my hand in the back with the head stick, and it was like putting my hand in a well-worn baseball glove. It just fit. You know, the minute I put my hands on the controls, I'm like, oh, wow, this is what a professional figure is supposed to feel like. It was nothing like the first one, but this is, you know, oh, boy. You know, so with this, I sold the first one, the first kits, to a magic store in Manhattan. It wasn't Tannen's, it was Flosso's magic store. And he turned it over and he sold it to somebody else. But I took some of that money and I gave it back to my dad. And then the rest of the money I saved up from work and stuff like that and band earnings and paid my dad off. But that was Gitch, and I still have Gitch to this day. He's downstairs in my office. I've repainted him since then because he needed a paint job after 25 years or so.
Yeah.
So that was my first professional figure, Gitch. It was Pete Michaels and Gitch, and I took pictures with me with my long Paul Stanley from Kiss hairdo, and we had cards made up, and I, you know, pushed myself and started doing shows.
Great, and that has led you all over the country. You know, traveled so far, and it led you. And I want to get to this, to Showtime at the Apollo.
Yes, the first white ventriloquist to ever do that show with a black puppet.
I gotta know the inside scoop. First of all, the question is twofold. How did you? What made you kind of dare to do an African American puppet and kind of touch on that kind of dynamic? And how did it lead to the Apollo? What's the story there? It's so fascinating to me.
Well, for years, from 1980, when I first got Gitch, to 1984, it was Pete Michaels and Gitch, Pete Michaels and Gitch, Pete Michaels and Gitch. You know, and that's the only puppet I had, and those are the only shows that I did. Was Pete Michaels and Gitch. Then in '84, Ray Gwill and Joel Leder were producing some ventriloquist figures together. So I had spoke to, it was either Ray or Joel, one of them, and I said, listen, I'm looking to have a black puppet made. Because all my life, preface that by saying, I grew up in a very racially mixed neighborhood as a kid, and you know, and still do to the most part today, which was good because in my neighborhood there were black people, there were white people, there were Latino people, there were Italian Americans, Irish, you name it. It was a melting pot. We had everybody. So as a kid, I used to mimic different accents and voices, and that was one of my strong points as a kid. I could do any accent, any voice, any dialect, you know. And I said, well, maybe because Gitch, when Gitch first started out, he was a kid from Brooklyn. He said, hey, how you doing? Nice to see you. How are you? And I went to the convention. My first Ven convention was me, Alan Seamark, and Todd Stockman. We drove down in my air-conditioned Chevy van in 1980. Yeah, brutal. And Alan had brought a bunch of figures to sell at the convention. And I brought Gitch, of course, because I was going to do it was a contest time, there was no open mic. And so we get there, and he's unpacking all these dummies, and I said, wow, look at this one. This is cute. And it looked like a little Desi Arnaz from I Love Lucy. It looked like, Desi Arnaz as a kid.
Yeah.
So I'm playing with this thing, and I'm, hello, Mr. Seamark, nice to see you. Yes, how you doing? Hello, Mr. Michael. Oh, it's nice to be at the convention. And I was like, oh, man. I said, man, Alan, this works. Look at me and this puppet. I got to have this dummy. And he's like, look, he says, I'm probably an idiot for doing this and saying this and losing a sale. He goes, but, rather than get another puppy, he goes, why don't you try that voice on Gitch? And I'm like, no, Gitch is like, he's like Fax. He's like the wise ass from Brooklyn. Yeah, how you doing? He said, try it. He says, I'd hate to see you just bought Gitch, and 2 years ago, and I'd hate to see him shelved already. And I said, I don't know. And so I picked up Gitch and went, hello, Mr. Michaels. Hello, Mr. Seamark. Nice to see you. Yes. And Alan goes, not for nothing, but that works better than the Brooklyn thing. I said, yeah, I think you're right. So Gitch became Puerto Rican at the 1980 convention. He went down as an Italian kid from Brooklyn, and when he came back, and I had to, oh, no, Mr. My mother and father go, wait a minute, is this the same puppet? All of a sudden, he's got a Latino accent. What happened? I said, well, we had a little change. But so they were like, well, that works. That's even, it's different than every other dummy that sounds like Fats. You get a Latino sound, accent. I said, yeah, that works. So it was Pete Michaels and Gitch. So I had this little Latino puppet, Gitch, and I said, well, I want to do this a black puppet, But I knew I could not get up in front of an audience as a white comic and do a black accent and for it to play right. Now, I've got black comic friends, Bill Bellamy, and, a lot of my black comic friends who do pseudo-white accents, and making fun of white people. And it plays very funny for the minority audiences. They like it because, let's make fun of whitey. And I get that, But for a white guy to get up there and talk like a black man, it just doesn't read right. It looks like I'm denigrating and being a racist, for want of a better term, which I hate that stupid word. So Woody comes in the mail, and this was back during when hip hop was just taking off, like 1984, Run DMC and all that stuff. And I knew I was going to call him Woody D, because that was the whole hip hop thing. Everybody had a last initial, So I got Woody D, and I'm playing around with him. My father saw him, and Woody was even cheaper than Gitch, believe it or not. I'm talking about the golden age when puppets were cheap.
Right.
So I'm playing with Woody D and blah, 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 and this and that. And my father says, you know what? He goes, that's the one that's going to make you. I'm like, no, come on, Dad. I got Gitch. Gitch is my main man. He says, no. He said, I'm telling you, this Woody D that you got is the one you're going to be successful with this one. I can see it. He said, because you're completely opposite from each other. I mean, you and Gitch, you kind of look kind of the same, now that you got your hair cut. But you were so opposite of Woody D. So if you close your eyes, you would swear there was a little black kid in the room talking, and it wasn't you. I said, I don't know, so, yeah, okay. So I start going out and doing shows with Gitch and with Woody D, splitting the bill. And fast forward a couple of years, about 88, 89. And it's probably 89, I'm thinking. And I'm in the city doing a benefit show for the police and fire department, Widows and Orphans Fund. And so the whole audience is cops and firemen. It's at this club on Broadway called China Chalet. And I'm up there doing my thing with Woody, and I'm killing. I'm destroying the crowd. Because Woody, Woody is, when Woody is unleashed, forget it.
Yeah.
So my friend is in the back and he's videotaping me. And I hear this guy while I'm up on stage, and he's got this laugh, this belly laugh. Sounds like, you ever see outside the fun house, you usually have that mannequin of the person sitting in the chair laughing back and forth.
Yes.
That's how this guy's laughing. And I'm like, who is this nut? After the show was over, I had to do maybe 10, 15 minutes. That was it. This guy comes up to me and he says, hi, my name is Tim Davis, blah, blah, blah. He said, and I book a lot of rooms in the city, and I would love to book you with that puppet. That's hilarious, So I said, okay, He had about 10 rooms that he's booking all around Manhattan. and they didn't pay a hell of a lot, but I was looking for exposure more than anything at that point. So one thing leads to another. I start getting more and more bookings with Woody, and I ended up getting a booking at Baruch College in Manhattan, a lunchtime thing. And me and a friend of mine, Vic DiBitetto, a comedian, we're on the show. So Vic is opening the show, and I come on with Woody. And Woody is he's Woody. It's one of those, there's something about Woody D that among all my other figures and all my other, bits that I do and characters that I do, it's just something about Woody D that no matter where I am with him, I could be at a church show and he would still kill because it's just the way he is.
That's awesome.
It's that personality. So I'm doing this show and I'm killing. I'm destroying the crowd, There's one kid there and Woody goes, "Yo, man, what's up with y'all?" Got that funny looking outfit. He goes, "What, you Italian?" He goes, "No, man. What he said? He says, "Oh, I'm Albanian." So Woody goes, "Oh, Albanian. Oh, the dog with the spots, right?" I said, "No, Woody, that's Dalmatian. He's Albanian." He said, "Oh, Albanian. Oh, so you're from Albany?" Oh, here we go. And we're killing. After the show, some guy comes up to me, got a trench coat on and a Kangol hat, light-skinned black guy, "Hi, my name is so-and-so. This is my card." He goes, "How would you like to be on Showtime at the Apollo?" I said, "Amateur night? Forget it. No way." He said, No, I'm talking about a paid spot. I'm looking at this guy, and I'm like, "You couldn't get me a cup of coffee the way you look." I said, "But I'll take your card." I said, "Look, you can get me a paid spot on Showtime at the Apollo. Call me. Here's my card." "Okay, fine." Boom.
And we are out of time for today. That's right, a ventriloquism cliffhanger. Who'd have thought? The fate of Pete's Apollo appearance rests with the frumpy man in the coat. What will happen? Find out next week. Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of... forget it. You will take notice on our hosting site that the first episode has been removed. I have created Vent Weekly Archives, that's ventweeklyarchives.podomatic.com, and will start the re-upload process as soon as I can. As always, you'll be the first to know. Well, that's it for us this week. Write to us. Take charge of your podcast. Please send your thoughts on all of our topics to ventriloquismweekly@gmail.com. After saying I was open to more avenues than just ventriloquism last week, I've got some great suggestions. I started this program to help us become well-rounded entertainers, understand the art form. And being here in New York, there are just different paths that are kind of coming to me to take and look at, and I would be remiss if I didn't pursue them and in the overall goal of bringing you the best programming possible. So, as you know, all of our episodes are available to download on iTunes. Well, most of them now. You can also listen and follow us on our hosting site, ventriloquismweekly.podomatic.com. That's ventriloquismweekly.podomatic.com. Signing off from New York City for Ventriloquism Weekly, I'm Matt Bailey, reminding all you vents out there to keep talking for two.